The one and only, thank goodness, Rebecca Davis. Hello.
Hello, John.
How are you?
I haven't started any fires, to my knowledge.
Well, none other than on Twitter, perhaps.
And in strangers' loins, yes, correct.
Oh, wow.
I beg your pardon.
I retract that.
Yeah, so you should.
Patently untrue.
Rebecca is, by the way, the 19th most popular person on Twitter in Cape Town.
I don't think that's true at all.
No, it is true. Colin tells me it's true. So Colin tells me that while Twitter was down on Monday, he was having a look at how the rankings have changed. You're the 19th most followed account in Cape Town, and you're in the top 50,000 globally.
Wow. Only 49,999 to assassinate.
You have posted 29,000 times on Twitter.
You know, people say that like it's a weird thing. Do you know how little that is actually? It's like
Rebecca,
once a day.
29,000.
If you divide that by the number of days in a year, I think you'll find it works out to about one a day times 100 years.
14th, Stefan, Lita, can you go to a computer, please? Rebecca joined on the 14th of March 2010. So see how many days have passed between the 14th of March 2010 and today, and let's divide it by 29,000 and see if... But what about when you're overseas and ill? Anyway.
I think what you'll find is that the majority of those were live tweeting the Oscar Pistorius.
Okay.
Trial.
Michael has just SMS to say, yes, you have, Rebecca, started fires, that is, in our hearts every time we hear your voice.
I mean, it's not loins, but I'll take it. Thank you.
Michael, you've never said that to me. What's wrong with my voice? What makes Rebecca's voice more attractive than mine? Takara luckily didn't lose any vineyards. Thelema and Rustenburg, sadly, not so lucky. Thank you very much. Musi Maimani's speech about race, I don't think it's got the right kind of coverage. I don't think it's had enough coverage, and I don't think it's been taken as seriously and analytically seriously as it should have been. It either gets, oh, whoa, Musi, or Musi, and very much in between. But Lindiwe Mazibuko, who could have been the leader of the DA, did engage it fairly seriously.
She did, which is interesting, John, in itself. Because Lindiwe Mazibuko, since she left for Harvard, 18 months ago, more than that, has maintained a very discreet silence on matters of DA policy. I think rightly, because, it can often seem churlish if you're sort of chirping from afar. But the fact that she's chosen to come out in the first few weeks of the year with this, fairly extensive analysis of a new DA policy in Business Day, I think is very interesting, and we've got to ask why. Is it her New Year's resolution that she's just going to start engaging with these issues? Is she preparing the ground for, a sort of re-emergence in the South African public discourse? Or is it simply that she considers this race issue in the DA to be, of such primary importance to the party that she thinks this is the moment at which she must break her silence? I don't know which of those it is, but I think it's interesting to speculate. And it was very interesting to read what she's saying, because obviously she's speaking as someone who comes from the belly of the beast, so to speak. She's been immersed in the DA for however many years. And I think if you read between the lines of what she's saying in this article in Business Day today, there are some fairly telling points she's making about the nature of the Democratic Alliance. So, for instance, it's clear from what she writes that her own ructions in the party extend beyond Helen Zille. It was well known that she'd had a fallout with Helen Zille, because she speaks, for instance, of the advisors closest to Maimane posturing conceitedly on social media. And one can speculate, I've got a few ideas about the people she's referring to there, some very active DA leaders who are on Twitter. She points out that the DA has twice tried to formulate this type of anti-racism policy before, but it has failed to have a material effect, which she suggests is a problem of organizational culture. And the picture she paints of that organizational culture, the internal culture of the DA, is not positive at all. She speaks of black members and black leaders being isolated, being othered, but simultaneously being discouraged to socialize together for fear that they will be seen as a sort of bloc, which is obviously not ideal. And she also identifies internal party narratives, she calls it, which identify white leaders as being the result of competence. They've simply climbed through the ranks because they're that good, while black leaders have risen as a result of the charity of white people. And as she points out, it's thanks to black leaders, perhaps, that the DA has succeeded in building its constituency in particular, primarily black rural areas. And she also suggests that the management of the party is still almost exclusively dominated by white males, which surely is not a surprise to anyone. But again, it's interesting to read this from somebody who was so thickly inside the DA. Of course, things may have changed since she left, but you have to imagine she has reasonably good sources on the inside still. My feeling is, though, John, that we definitely have not seen the last of Lindiwe Mazibuko in the DA. I don't think so.
Well, I hope not in politics. If she chooses to make her political home somewhere else, well, then, we'll see what choice she makes. But it didn't strike me as somebody who is abandoning the DA and dishing the dirt on a party that she's now walking away from. That's not the way I read it. I read it as somebody who's still committed to it.
Right.
And trusts that what Maimane said suggests that everybody else is as serious about the party as she is and will take her advice and deal with it as
I agree
fit,
with you. And obviously we have a precedent for somebody being fairly senior in the DA, leaving it and going on to dish all the dirt, and that is the columnist Gareth Van Onselen, who does this weekly and is, I imagine, a constant thorn in the DA's side. I don't think this is going to be Mazibuko's role. But the real reason I think that Mazibuko is eventually going to make her return to the DA, it's a very tenuous piece of evidence, is because of when Mmusi Maimane was elected leader of the DA and Lindiwe Mazibuko tweeted a picture of Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones. And as anyone who watches Game of Thrones will know, Daenerys Targaryen is plotting her return with an army of dragons to reclaim her victory over the
I'm
empire.
very glad you explained the significance of that. I would not have got it by myself.
I'm certain my analysis is correct, but we'd have to get Lindiwe on the line to confirm that.
By the way, Ms. Davis, if apparently you're not very big on weekend tweeting, is that correct?
That's correct, because I have what's known as a life.
Yep. Then you have tweeted on average 20 times a day since you joined Twitter.
Right, very moderate. Goodness, abstemious. I'm
well,
up there.
1 to 20 is a fairly significant increase.
I hardly tweet anymore, John, because I'm too scared of being outed as a racist at any moment. The finger can point.
Yeah, and Marie Claire advertising for an intern to work from 8:30 until 5 p.m. for 6 months and be paid 30 Rand a day, which is infinitely more than Cosmopolitan offered, the zero.
That's right.
Marie Claire has been offering a statement through the day. That statement has not yet reached me, so I don't know what their response is going to be. Is there a response? Are you going to hate me if I say, well, if you really want to work in magazines, then working for 30 Rand a day for 6 months is one way of showing A, your ability, and B, your commitment?
Sure, if you can afford it, John. 30 Rand does not cover transport and food, for instance, so it automatically cuts out people who need to have at least those two basics covered. So for a start, you're already excluding a significant amount of people who probably want to work in magazines. 30 Rand a day is just nothing. This argument is obviously nothing new. And in particular in the UK and the US, this conversation has been brewing for years, to the point now where the US in particular has seen so many lawsuits by unpaid or underpaid interns towards companies that I think the practice is virtually being phased out. What I find interesting, John, is that in the US, in a recent ruling, the Supreme Court laid down a number of conditions which have to be met by a company in order to justify not paying interns. As I said, this is the US, so it has no application to us. Still interesting. And one of those conditions is the employer that takes on the intern can derive no immediate advantage from the activities of the intern, and on occasion its operations may actually be impeded. So the idea there is that you cannot take on an intern to do actually someone's job, to do like proper work. It's clearly presenting the internship there as a sort of form of charity outreach. Then you are basically doing this knowing that you will derive
Which is
no
not
advantage.
what Marie Claire's intern is going to be expected to contribute, and contribute productively, not to the magazine so much as the magazine's website is going to be expected to take photographs and contribute content to the website.
Which obviously will be good experience for them, but it is definitely a different vision of what being an intern entails, and probably the right one. But the point is also that if you're going to be doing what sounds like a substantial amount of work, looking at that ad, I felt exhausted looking at it. I don't think I could take up this internship, even if they paid me more.
Well, you are enjoying a brief retirement at the moment, so not much. Doesn't take much to exhaust you.
That's right. Then I think that, that does sound like it is essentially a job rather than an internship. And, the argument is just that to what degree can you exclude so many people by virtue of setting the bar so low?
Yeah, but wherever you set the bar, you're excluding people. If you set the bar at a matric, you can't be this intern unless you've got a matric. What about the grade 11s who are desperate to work for a magazine? Is there not a point at which a bar gets set and a certain quantum of people are going to be excluded by the bar?
I think, John, it's a difficult one, but I think it's different to exclude someone on the basis of merit than on pure financials. Just not having 30 Rand a day available. That seems to me to be, that sort of makes me a bit sad. Also because I cannot imagine, surely 30 Rand is so little per day. I understand magazines are going under, but is there really nothing more in this budget that can stretch to something a little more than that? I don't know, but I do think that companies in South Africa are going to face increasing heat over this. Every time this comes up on Twitter, there's this, this absolute outpouring of disgust. So someone's going to have to find a solution at some point.
And then you've also, my favourite beast is the tardigrade.
Is that right?
It has been for a while. I've been asked several rapid-fire questions about it, and because I study it with such deep intent and passion, I always get the answer right.
And how would you define a tardigrade, just so we're all on the same page?
It's a water bear. It's a tiny, microscopically tiny creature which has the ability to shut itself down to the level of a single molecule. So it takes the notion of hibernation to the complete and utter extreme. It can do for 10, 15 years what a bear does uncomfortably for 3 months.
This is when you said I was in retirement. That's what I'm doing, shutting down to my metabolic level. They're also known as moss piglets, John. Did you know that?
Yes.
That's also a very sweet term for them. Anyway, the point is, this animal, this tardigrade, as you say, frozen in Antarctic moss in 1983, has been unfrozen after 30 years. And what this suggests to me, John, though probably not to anyone else, is that we should really be looking more closely at human cryogenics. This is the moment. If they can take tardigrades and bring them back to life after 30 years,
Jean,
how soon...
Is she serious? Guys,
I am serious.
Is she serious?
I'm dead serious. How soon before we can do the same with humans? To this end, John, I was investigating before I came online.
But no, hold on a second. The tardigrade has evolved
I
over.
knew
It's
you were
been
gonna
around.
come with this
It's been around.
buzzkill point.
It's been around for eons.
Correct.
And it has evolved to the point where it can shut itself down at the molecular
This
level.
is, in fact, its whole thing. I agree.
And we have not.
We have not, however...
We've evolutionary been designed to die at 40, 50, 60, 70, 80.
That's right, like that poor girl this week who died when she wore shorts to a party in the US. Scientists, however, John, are already experimenting with cooling bodies during trauma operations to give themselves more time, because if you can get a cell cold enough without actually killing it, it can... be suspended in some way. So these things are already happening. And I, for one, was just heartened by this advancement with the tardigrade. And, with my visionary vision, looked to the human...
Visionary vision is good.
the human possibilities. However, before I came on air, I was looking online for South African companies which deal with human cryogenics, and I couldn't find any. So if you know of a South African company that is willing to freeze humans for future reanimation, do please let us know.
I had cryotherapy, which is not cryogenics. I was subjected to...
de-thaw your personality.
Impossible. There is nothing cold enough for that. John, too, minus 180 degrees. We stood in this little chamber for 3 minutes, and the body temperature was dropped to minus 160 degrees, and we got out feeling absolutely terrific.
Fantastic.
Would you Sally, we'll come to you very shortly. Would you like, seriously, if the technology were available, would you like to be frozen?
Absolutely. What's the harm, John? What's the harm? Me in a freezer or me under the ground?
Do you know how stuffed the world is now? So whether I'd rather live 90 years now than 60 years now, and then be woken up in 100 years' time, and the world is even more stuffed up than it is now.
You don't know that, John.
Of course it is.
What you're lacking, John, is visionary vision, I'll tell you that.
I'm lacking optimistic visionary vision, Rebecca. Put on your headphones, please. Sally is calling us about internship. Hello, Sally.
Hi, John. My son did a degree and then a postgrad in journalism at Rhodes. He worked for Golf Digest in 2011. They didn't pay him 1 cent. And he wrote one of their major articles and a couple of others.
And how long did he work for at that?
For 6 months.
6 months. And did they
Yeah.
take him on afterwards?
No.
Ah,
Does he think it was worth it? Does he think the skills and experience?
Yes, yeah, it did. Yeah, luckily we were able to support him while he did it, but definitely he learned a lot from it. He learned a lot of research, and it's 6 months of a job.
And did that 6 months better position him to get a more permanent job at a decent salary?
It did, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Sally. We have now, by the way, Rebecca, very quickly, before we have to say goodbye, do have Marie Claire's statement. We've been following your voices on social media and would like to address the debate about our internship program, which provides valuable training in magazine and digital publishing. We empower participants through mentoring from industry heavyweights, helping them to build a portfolio of work and content and facilitating crucial relationships within the industry. While the benefits of interning are many, we're in the process of reviewing our internship program. We will discuss this with key stakeholders in the business and make changes. We will be transparent about the outcome once a decision has been made. Thank you for bringing this important discussion to us.
fair play.
Thank you very much, Rebecca Davis.
Thanks, John.